Hey guys, it's Sylvia from historic Fountain City, Wisconsin, where I have a small shop where I sell my repurposed items, crafts, and I also hold workshops. But guess what? It's that time of month. Who thought I'd ever be excited for that time of the month? But here I am at my age, excited. It's time for Sonnet's Creative Maker's Box. Oh my God, I know this November box, best box ever. I know I say that every month, but I swear they just keep getting better and better. And I'm almost already out of my papers and I need more. Fortunately, because I subscribe, I'm able to order more papers and they'll come with my next month's box. So, and I think I'm going to have to stock up for next year because, yeah, they're that good. I squealed like a little child on Christmas morning. Like Santa brought me everything I wanted just in this little box. So let's get started and I'll show you what I've created using these papers. Unfortunately, I had a prior commitment the day that my box arrived. So I had to wait knowing the box had been delivered before I could open it. And now I'm videotaping myself opening the box and I'm trying to be all professional about it instead of ripping it open like the inner child inside of me wanted to do. In the box, you get a thank you card that will give you a list of all the papers and paints in the box. It also gives you a QR code where you can follow Sonnet's inspirational video that's exclusive to the members. And it also has a little piece of motivation. So here I'm trying to open my papers and again, trying to be professional, even though I just want to rip right through it. So it takes me a minute to open it up calmly and nicely. I'm not used to that. So this is about where I start squealing like a little child. I am in love with these Christmas project blocks by Roycycled Decoupaged papers. Like, I was so excited. I had to open the papers up and see all of it, like, immediately. I couldn't wait till after I was done unboxing the box. I definitely want more of these papers. And at this point, I'm like struggling to get it open. I want to see the papers. I'm trying to be professional. All these project ideas are going through my head with what I can do with these papers. So I finally get my papers open. All the papers are individually wrapped to help protect them. And I open up my papers and seriously, I'm in love. These vintage Santas and with the stamps, like perfect. I don't know. Believe it or not, I'm speechless. But yeah, love them. And then I open it up and another Santa and the vintage Christmas caroler. I'm like, seriously, I need more. And I'm not worried about the creases in the paper because when I use the papers, that crease easily comes out. You don't even have to do anything with it. The next paper is Holiday Plaid by Roycycled. And again, I'm excited because I'm in Midwestern and we love our plaid. Now it's time for Connie's papers. The Cozy Cabin comes in, well, 2 different sizes, but 3 pieces. So you can get 3 projects out of the one sheet. And I actually live in a little cabin. So this paper is actually perfect for me. It feels like it's a piece of my own home. And this cute little ornament. You can tell I kind of forget about unboxing because I'm stuck in what should I do with these papers. And now it's the Potted Pine by Connie, which of course I'm holding it upside down and I apologize. I don't even realize I'm doing that. But for me, porch pots in the Midwest are huge during the holiday season. So I felt like this was just a little piece of porch pot wrapped up in my nice little box. I also got some Sweet Pickens Milk Paint in the color Truffle. And if you haven't tried the milk paint yet, you gotta give it a go. It is now becoming one of my favorite paints. You always get a little gift from Sonnet, and in this month's box, the gift is some nice red velvet ribbon to help tie some of your projects together at the end. Fusion mineral paint, you get 2 different colors. You get the Highlander, which is a nice deep, a little shade darker in a red, and you get Everett, which is a nice complementary green. And of course, those 2 colors go together perfectly. And then the DIY paint colors. You get Monet's Garden, which is a nice green, and Marquee, which is a perfect match for a red. And again, great complementary traditional Christmas colors. I am just so excited over this box. I just cannot wait to start creating. So for the first project, I grabbed a saw from my stash. I might have 1, 2, or I don't know, 20 of them. I did grab a smaller saw. I felt it fit the potted pine paper from Connie perfectly. Say that 10 times over. I first grabbed some chiffon paint by Rust-Oleum chalk paint, and I covered the blade of the saw. What I don't have on camera is that prior to painting the saw, I soaked the saw overnight in straight vinegar. It helps take the surface rust off and gives it a cleaner surface to paint on. When I decoupage papers, I like to paint the background a light color. It just kind of helps the details of the paper pop out and brighten it up. Next, I'm going to paint with some Vaseline. What I do is I take a tiny paintbrush and I go over the metal pieces of the saw handle. That way, if I get any paint on them while I'm painting the handle, it'll come right off. The paint doesn't adhere to the Vaseline. And I personally like to leave the rustic metal showing versus covering it up with paint. I'm going to grab the Marquee by DIY and I'm going to start painting the handle. I'm going to do both the front and back sides of the handle to give it a more complete feel or look. It does take quite a bit of time to give it that coat of paint over both saws and having the front dry before I paint the back. So I'm going to go ahead and skip forward so you don't have to sit here and bore you to death while I paint the handle. After the handle is completely painted, I'm just going to give the blade of the saw a second coat of the chiffon chalk paint. I then decide to use charcoal by Rust-Oleum chalk paint to paint in the metal part of the blade of the saw next to the handle so that it kind of blends in with the paper once I decoupage the paper onto the saw blade. I just thought it would give it a cleaner look versus a white chunk of off-white next to the handle under the picture. Helps blend it in somewhat. Once I know that my paper is going to fit, I grab the sanding block and I just kind of distress my handle so that it's got that vintage vibe to it and doesn't look all crisp and clean and new. What's great about this sanding block by 3M, I can wash it when I'm done and it takes the red paint off and I can use it on another project. I then decide to use DIY black dark wax on the handle. So I'm just going to coat the handle with the wax, and then I'm going to take the wax off. This will help seal the project. However, I did forget that I needed to seal the paint before adding the wax. So I actually took it outside and sprayed the handle, and then I added the wax. I dip my brush in water and I go over the bottom of the paper to rip it off. That way it gives it more of a jagged edge that I can blend it in with the saw versus a nice crisp clean line that looks like I glued it on. I then decide it needs a little bit more charcoal paint to blend in with. It was a little too light. And I also grab a little old 57 by DIY because I feel like that color was also in the paper. And I use my new mad blending skills to add that blue so that it blends in with the paper once I attach it. Now it's time to attach the paper. I'm using DIY liquid patina. Because it is a metal saw, I am not going to use the heat method to apply the paper. And here, I forgot to make sure that the tree was centered. So I have to reposition my paper, which is kind of nice with the rice papers. You have a little bit of leadway of time. And I'm just using the liquid patina to attach the pine tree to my saw blade. Then I use the wet method to take off the top of the saw. I decided to use crinoline by DIY, and I painted the top of the saw, and I added a little bit of brown to it and black so that it could kind of blend right into the top of the saw. And I used the DIY liquid patina to finish adhering the pine pot to the saw. I'm now carefully ripping the sides off of the paper on each side of the saw. And I actually probably shouldn't have ripped so hard so that I can use them again later if I needed them, because I could have actually attached it to the top. But I grabbed my lighter and I just started setting the edges on fire, and it helps take off the excess paper. And what was really nice with the saw is that it was able to help get in between all those little saw blade teeth, and I didn't have to sand each one individually. And by the way, I do have water next to me in case there was a boo-boo and I had an accident. But otherwise, using the lighter is usually my preferred method for trimming off my excess decoupage papers. Now I'm just using my little dauber. It's a makeup brush from Dollar Tree. One of my viewers recommend I use it. And I just kind of dab in some of that charcoal black paint just to help blend it in with the paper. Grab some more DIY liquid patina and seal my final project. So I flip my saw over, I grab a 3-inch plate hanger disc. I'm going to add some water to it, make sure my surface is clean, and let it sit for a few minutes. Once the water has activated the glue on the disc, I'm just going to take that disc, stick it to the back of my saw, and it's a hanger that's strong enough that the saw can hang on the wall. For my cozy cabin, I wanted to build a little cozy cabin since that's where I live, in a cozy cabin in the woods. Using a scrap 2x6, I just measured it out using the paper and then cut the tops off with a 45-degree angle on my miter saw. I'm using taupe Rust-Oleum chalk paint to paint the base of my home. I grabbed some DIY Dark and Decrepit, and I used that to stain the roof and the chimney. I wiped it on with a brush, and then I used a baby wipe just to take off that extra paint, and it acts more like a stain, and I can see the wood grain in the pieces. I decide the cabin needs a little bit more color, so I grab Monet's Garden and I paint the edges of the cabin. I decide I want to add a little texture behind the paper. So I'm grabbing my IOD Kindest Regards stamp, which you can tell by the looks of it. It's had a lot of use and love. It's one of my favorite stamps. And I'm just dab some ink right on it, and I am going to give it a little print right over the full surface. Sorry, my gray hair is in the way. And stamp right over the whole surface, front surface of the cabin. I'm now using a baby wipe to clean off my Kindest Regards stamp until it's time to give it a much better thorough cleaning. Using liquid patina by DIY, I'm going to adhere the rice paper to the cabin. I'm applying the liquid patina in sections, working my way down the front of the cabin. Now I get to grab my lighter and burn the edges off the cabin. Again, I don't recommend doing this inside your home. I do have water available in case I have a little accident, but I love the way the burning method works with removing the excess paper. And I like that singed look for blending it into my projects. And I just add a little extra liquid patina in the areas I felt the edges weren't adhered well. And I just finish it off with a top coat of liquid patina to seal my project. It's now time to adhere my roof. I'm going to use a combination of Type Bond and E6000. E6000 is super strong. However, it does take overnight to dry. So by using the Type Bond, which is also a very strong glue, it will adhere quicker. So I'm just going to use both glues, and it's just the best of both worlds. And once it's dry, I can glue on my chimney. And just to add a little extra something, I'm going to take Pint Art Glitter Decoupage Medium, and I'm going to give it a coat. One, it does help seal the project, and two, it's got glitter mixed in, so it just kind of gives it that extra little shine for the holiday season. After it was dry, I felt like it still needed a little color. So I grabbed the marquee by DIY and I gave a dry brush of paint over the roof. I didn't give it a solid coat, but just enough to give it some color and looked a little worn and I darkened up the roof a little bit with a little dark and decrepit just to make it feel a little more rustic. I wanted to add some snow to my cabin, so I grabbed Deco Art Snow Text. And this is my first time using this medium. It's really, really light. It's almost like painting with styrofoam. It gave a nice snowy effect, but once it's gone, I don't know if I would use it again. After purchasing and using this, I learned on one of the lives with Sonnet and Connie that DIY has a frosting medium, and Connie used that for a snow, and I think I'm going to try that next. For project 3, I wanted to make a wood tag using the vintage Santa stamps from the Christmas project blocks paper. I'm going to paint the tag white to give it a nice solid base. Grabbed a 1x12 scrap wood and I clipped the corners with a 45-degree angle on my miter saw. And I used my paddle drill bit, 1-inch paddle drill bit, to drill a hole in the middle. I then sanded the board down. That it needed something more. So I mixed up the truffle milk paint, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio. You want it like thick, like a milkshake consistency. And I decided to apply that on the wooden tag, especially around the edges. Not so much. I wasn't so much worried about the middle because I wanted that brighter white to help pop out the colors of the decoupage paper. So I just ran around the edges using the milk paint. I decided to apply heat to see if I could get any of that crackling effect on the wood tag. I painted and dried the board with the truffle milk paint. I then took it outside and I sprayed it with Rust-Oleum clear coat just to give it a seal. I'm now using Espresso by Fusion, and it's a wax. So I'm just covering it with the Espresso brown wax, and then I'm going to wipe it off. And I repeat the process on the sides and front of the tag. I felt like the tag needed a little bit more as far as blending the papers in with the wood or the painted wood. So I am now adding a little bit of the chiffon by Rust-Oleum chalk paint over the truffle milk paint. Using Everett by Fusion Paint, I add the green to the edges of the tag to give it a little color. I use a baby wipe to blend in the green paint and give it a light distress. And now I take weathered wood and I add a little bit of weathered wood and blend that in just to add more depth and color and layers to make it used and worn. Now, after I've achieved that worn wood look, I'm going to grab some liquid patina. And, well, first I'm going to spray my decoupage paper. Then I'm grabbing liquid patina. And I'm going to start adhering the paper to the board. And again, I grab my lighter and I burn off the edges of the paper so that I can blend it right into the wood. I had a large washer from a previous project that I had soaked in a mixture of 1-to-1 vinegar and hydrogen peroxide, and I just added table salt and let it sit overnight, and it rusted to the washer. So I'm just gluing the washer on with E6000. Grabbing some rope I had from the dollar store, I just tied it right on in a square knot and added a backing. I chose a D-ring to place on the back of the board. That way they can either lean it on something or they can hang it on the wall. I always like options. So for our final project, I picked this sled. I had purchased it for like $2 at a local thrift store in Wabasha, Minnesota. I thought it had some good bones, but yeah, the deco has got to go. And first, we're going to get rid of this yellow cord. And the Santa and tinsel, yeah, gotta go also. And that cardboard Santa had been stapled on, so I just need to remove the staples. Actually, they were easy enough. I didn't quite know where my pliers was, my needle nose, so I just used these scissors, and actually they lifted right out. And using a baby wipe, I'm just going to wipe off the remnants of all that tinsel and stuff. I'm then going to take the sled to the electric sander, and I took off all the, well, not all the extra paint, but a layer of the varnish and paint. And I'm actually thinking it already looks so much better. I'm going to start painting the bottom of the sled. I'm going over the black with Rust-Oleum chalk paint and charcoal. Once that black is refreshed and recolored, I am going to grab the Highliner by Fusion, and I am going to start painting the bottom of the sled in the red. Once the bottom of the sled is fully painted and dried, I am going to flip it over and I am going to paint the red on top of the sled. Once the sled was all painted with the red and the black, I used white paint to paint the center two slats. The white paint is really going to help the holiday plaid decoupage paper pop out. Using liquid patina, I am going to place the plaid holiday paper on the center two slats. First, I need to spray my decoupage paper. It helps loosen up the fibers for bending the paper around or moving the paper around and lessens wrinkles. Grab my lighter and I start burning the edges. I did have difficulty with the edges burning, so I do end up going and grabbing a nail file and filing down the sides of the sled. I grab some liquid patina and I seal the decoupage paper with another coating. I recently found a pair of men's black figure skates at our local Goodwill, and I had to have them. I knew the gold transfers from IOD tinsel would be perfect, so I cut out some snowflakes. Using the transfer stick that comes with your IOD transfers, I applied 3 gold snowflakes to the skate. And yes, it was really that easy to apply the gold transfers. After getting the 3 snowflakes on the skate, I felt like it just needed a little more. So I cut out some trees and I applied them near the toe of the skate. I then decided it needed a couple more snowflakes. It was just so easy, and I liked the gold on black. I just couldn't stop. And yet, sometimes less is better. I just love how the gold turns out on that black skate. And to think I was so intimidated to try the foil transfers. And as it turns out, it was really easy to do. I tie the skate on the sled. I make a gold bow and I add some floral. I really like that black skate with the gold tinsel, and I think it's the perfect matchup with the little sled. Okay, you guys, what did you think? Are you excited to create with these papers as I am? I had so many ideas in my head. I actually had to call Sandra at Midwest Charm and talk through everything in my head to come up with the projects for this video. So a huge shout out to Sandra for helping me, because I was just my mind was going a mile a minute because I wanted to do so much. But again, I was limited in what I could do until I get more papers, which I will be ordering because I can. I'm a subscriber to the box, and even though they're a limited edition, I'm getting me some more. And I'll probably have some on hand so I can start for next year's Christmas too. So I'd love to know, what was your favorite project? Mine, I was kind of torn with the sled. I wish the skate had been a little bit smaller, but I was excited to find the black skates to put on the sled. And, I do like the saw. I have a soft spot for repurposing old saws. So let me know what you liked the best, if you're going to try any of these projects or gained any inspiration. And again, if you did gain some inspiration, please hit subscribe below and follow me on my creative journey. So grab your box and let's get creating.